How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Talking Elite Fitness. I'm Sean Woodland, joined as always by Lauren Kalil and Tommy Marquez. How's everybody doing?
We're great. Sean, how are you?
I'm hanging in there, doing all right. You know, like my grandpa used to say.
Rams won.
They did, so they're 1-0, so that's a positive. My grandfather used to look at me when I asked him that question. He's like, still kicking, just not as high. You know, so.
Now I have a picture of you doing like a Rockets high kick, but getting it like parallel.
And you'll be shocked to hear my grandfather on my mother's side was a large individual. Like he was Iowa country back strong. So there's no way that man was going to be, you know, doing anything like that. God rest his soul. So no, I'm doing okay. You know, we were chatting the other day over via text, and it was like cloudy and kind of rainy here a little bit. Like fall was kind of peeking over the fence going, hey, how you doing? Just almost here. You know, this is what it's going to be like. And I almost gave myself the green light for a pumpkin spice latte, but then the sun kind of came out like, nope, not cold enough. Sun's coming out.
You played us in that text thread.
I thought it was going to happen. Yeah, I'm like, you know, it kind of sounds good. It was cloudy. Like the leaves were going, like it was nice up here. I was like, I could go for
Lauren
one.
Lauren was going to Venmo money for
If you said you were going to Starbucks, I was going to immediately Venmo you to pay for your order because I couldn't believe it was happening. And the smile that came across my face for you to just rip it all away when you said, never mind, sun's out.
Yeah, no, I'm like, no, it's not fall yet. Like I said, it was just fall over the fence going, hey man, how you doing? I'm going to be here soon. So you're going to get one here in a little bit. But yeah, that was it. Okay. Today we are going to spend some time with our good friend, Austin Malleolo. Lauren and Tommy spoke to him earlier. They spoke to Austin about his whole career timeline. I mean, the guy's been around since the beginning. You want to talk about an OG. Austin is an OG. Why he made the move to CrossFit Mayhem and what he hopes to accomplish in the future. But before we get to that, I want to thank our sponsor for today. That is Thirdzy and their Rest and Recovery Collagen. You can go to thirdzy.com, use the code TEF, and you will save 20% and you will improve the way you sleep and you recover. Why is that? Glad you asked. That's because Thirdzy has ingredients like GABA, L-theanine, magnesium. They're all in there as they help you calm your central nervous system and you sleep better, recover better. And here's the cool thing. If you're like me and you don't get enough sleep, I don't know why I can't get enough sleep. I mean, I have a few clues, but just don't get enough sleep. If you take Thirdzy, you're going to get the most out of the sleep that you do get, and you're going to feel really good when you wake up, right? We have Jason Grubb on in a future episode. He's a Thirdzy athlete. If you want to be a 6-time master champion, you probably should get some Thirdzy. I'm just saying, it's going to help you. So go to thirdzy.com. The code is TEF. You're going to save 20% on their Rest and Recovery Collagen, and you will thank us, and you will enjoy a great night's sleep. Okay, without further ado, here is a conversation that Lauren and Tommy had with the one and only Austin Malleolo.
All right, we're joined now by our guest this week. He is the VP of Gyms at Mayhem, CrossFit Mayhem, the Mayhem family, the bigger Mayhem global takeover, whatever you want to call it. It's Austin Malleolo. Austin, how you doing, my friend? Good to see you, and thanks for joining us today.
I appreciate you. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's always good to come on and chop it up.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a very newsworthy move. It kind of came out a week ago, and then a recent podcast with Rich and Rory dropped as well that kind of expanded upon it. But you left CrossFit HQ, where you'd worked for quite some time. You'd been a part of the company at a multitude of levels, and you're making the switch over now to join the Mayhem crew. For people who are unfamiliar, can you give us a little bit of a timeline as to your journey in discovering the methodology, competing at the sport at the highest level, teaching around the globe, and then where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try my best not to bore anyone, but because now it's almost like a life story. It's been so long, but but yes, gosh, I found CrossFit sort of, I guess, traditional to a lot of people, like, a long time ago in just a traditional Globo gym, right? And that's how I got introduced to the methodology. I think now it doesn't happen as much, but it was someone that said, hey, you gotta try this CrossFit thing. They have a workout called Fran, like that was the literally, like it seems fake now, but that's, how a lot of us figured it out, did Fran, sure. None of the reps counted and put me on my back and the rest was history. But And then I started to dive into the old CrossFit Journal, and and I realized you can compete, and I was like, what is this movie Every Second Counts? So of course I bought the DVD and had to get that mailed and shipped so I could watch it. And that was how I got introduced into the methodology at that level. And then at the time, just athletically thinking, I was like, this is really cool. I want to, of course, someone in their young 20s, like, I'm going to compete, right? Like, because that's the first thing that comes to your mind. And then realized that I didn't really know anything about the movements and the Olympic lifts, these things that, that were just referenced a lot on CrossFit.com. So I signed up for my level 1, figured that would be a good place to start, to learn about what I wanted to do, and went to my level 1. And, I think a lot of people that I'm very close with now that were there, from, Pat Barber that was there, and Dennis Marshall, and Chuck Carswell, and John Gilson was there. So some old names, but so that was my introduction to it, and that was in 2009, and somehow I was fortunate enough to, end up going to the CrossFit Games in 2010. So that was my first CrossFit Games in 2010. The format back then I think it was called the sectional, and then a regional, and then the game. So the sectionals, they broke the Northeast into 2 parts. So I was like New York, New Jersey, and then there was everything else, up in the Northeast, and I just remember that workout, like I couldn't do double unders, and that it was like workout double unders, and none of us could do them. We were in a back alley at CrossFit Montclair, in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then obviously the Albany parking lot, which was somewhat reminiscent from the CrossFit Games this year, was where the Albany CrossFit, which is where the regionals were, and with Rob Orlando, James Hobart, that whole crew, and Rob Orlando doing it. It was like a 3-rep max clean and jerk in the parking lot. And I remember this was 2010, and he did 300, and it's hard to explain what the time. Everyone talks about what the old days were like. This event, I think, really just personified CrossFit at that time. One, we were in a parking lot where my dad, for example, was making sure my bar didn't roll away, like mid-event. This was mid-regionals, like that's what it was like. Like, he was just there, like, hey, that bar's rolling. He would go get it for me. And you look over at Rob, because Rob was, the guy to beat and the strongest guy in the world, and it was like a mosh pit around him because he was doing the 300, for 3 in 45 seconds. That was the event, and everyone was around him. It literally was like a concert with 5 feet away from him. It was completely unsafe, but it was awesome in the same vein. And, and then, he has the bar overhead, and there's some iconic pictures from that. But that was my start. Somehow I squeaked in, made it to the CrossFit Games, in 2010. And then, was fortunate enough to finish pretty high up that year. I feel like just got lucky. Amanda came out, and I figured out how to do a muscle up, on Friday night under the lights, and the rest was history there. And so that's
you finished 6th, by the way. You finished 6th.
Yes,
like that. That was. It wasn't just like I did pretty well. You did excellent in full body compression.
Full body compression. That's right, and that's something that Rich and I were having a laugh about those games in general. It was so fun because just the things that we like. Again, we got quarantined in a room. We were we had no idea what we were doing. It was just there's so many fun aspects of that. You kind of look back. It was cool, raw. I mean, I left so I was in the first heat of Amanda, and I literally just was like, all right, I'm just going to go to sleep. It was late, and I'm watching the event from my iPad driving home. And I'm like, man, I think I'm going to do well in this event. Like, I didn't expect it. I think I finished 5th, in Amanda. But, while the last heat was going, as Jason was imploding, throwing the barbell at the camera, right, I was like, this is wild. And so I wasn't even there watching the event. I was literally driving to the hotel to go to sleep. And that really and that laid the framework. Life is somewhat serendipitous in that way, where I met a lot of people there. And then in 2010 I was able to actually intern for seminar staff, and after the CrossFit Games, and I made it on seminar staff, and that was end of the year there, and I was actually coaching at Albany CrossFit. I had moved to Albany at that time, and I was coaching there for just a short stint, and then Reebok signed on as the title partner, and that's how I got introduced to the folks at Reebok and ended up going out there to get sponsored. Again, most surreal moment in life as a young kid of getting like, you're going to sponsor me to work out, right? And they were so young. I mean, they didn't have anything for CrossFit at the time. They're like, yeah, the only clothes they had for athletes were like football, because they had sponsored the NFL at the time. So they gave me a bunch of gear, but it was in NFL sizes for giants. And obviously, I got a
CrossFitters' body frame is a little bit different than NFL
I'll never
players.
forget that. I'm like, oh, this whatever. The sweatsuit looks cool. It was meant to fit DeMarcus Ware, not me, right? So it's just so big. I wish I kept it. Like, it was one of those things. Like, it looked like a clown suit. But that ended up actually pulling me out to where I am now, is out to the Boston area, because I was like, hey, if you need help coaching at this gym, let me know. And they were growing. So I ended up taking a risk and moving out here, and ended up, running the Reebok World Headquarters for 10 years there. And along that way, gosh, went to the CrossFit Games 8 times, I think 5 as an individual or 6, and then a couple as team, which was a blast, obviously, and got to, Carson and then Madison and all those things. So it was a blast. And then all the while working seminar staff. So I was on staff for, there was a 10-year period. And I was telling someone this, in the Mayhem crew, is that I was working 40 weekends a year for about 10 years. So I worked over 400 seminars for CrossFit, level 1s, level 2s, and like you said, around the world, there's not many places I haven't been from a seminar perspective, which unbelievably fortunate to have traveled the world and do that and just meet, so many people. When people say what is the most amazing aspect of the CrossFit community, it's just that. I mean, you could literally go around the world, and you guys know this so well, and be in a completely foreign place and walk into a gym and you just feel like you're at home. And so that was a part of that period. And then also along the way, opened up a handful of gyms in the Boston area too. Had a CrossFit One Nation gyms, of which are still in existence. I no longer own them, but they're still cranking, and and they're still doing their thing, which is awesome. So, and then prior to moving to Mayhem, the last 5 years, I transitioned into a role, moved on from Reebok about 5 years ago, and went obviously at CrossFit, kind of overseeing the affiliates and in sort of a handful of different roles there. And it's about, I think a month or so ago officially, but then announced, a few weeks later, moved on to Mayhem, Rich and the crew down in Cookeville, and going to be supporting what Mayhem has done so well already, is just building upon supporting their community and growing the presence within their affiliates and their gyms. And I'm really fired up and excited about it. Obviously, Rich and I go way back from being quarantined in the room in 2010 to, growing our friendship over the years, but also, just always been an admirer of what he's built alongside of his athletic career, right? Which is a really strong business that serves the community. So excited to be a part of it.
Then when you look at the last, 15 years being such a staple of CrossFit HQ, did like the decision to now join the Mayhem crew, is that because you felt like, your work was done at CrossFit and you've done, everything you can to leave a legacy or have improvements or growth with the community and the entity, that now you see your skills can now grow something and help differently? Or how did that decision come about for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, I think the first and foremost, I think in any time you go through a transition in life, for me, this was a really big one. It's not one, at least for me, it's not one that I just was like, this is going to happen. Like, it wasn't random. It wasn't something that just kind of came up. Now, the timing with Rich and Mayhem was what's somewhat serendipitous of, and that's the way life works, right? But, where, kind of things happen, and you can't control what you can't control, but you can put yourself in the best position to be ready when things happen. And I'm a believer in that. But, obviously I've had the opportunity to be at CrossFit and work at CrossFit in so many different ways across the last 15 plus years. And, I knew that at some point I was probably going to move on, not for anything else, just for me personally, and the impact that I would want to make professionally, but also what I wanted to do, and what that looked like. And honestly, it took a lot of time just to come to an emotional place where that was okay for me to do. Where I spent a lot of time talking to mentors and people I look up to about what it looks like to transition. I think a lot of people, you see one thing, but you don't really see what the year and a half of really getting yourself to a place that allows you to take action. So I did spend a long time talking to people I respect and asking them their advice and what they did, and fortunate enough to really lean on some people that gave me some really important sort of nuggets. And I think I said this when I was talking to Rich, where someone said this, like, Austin, maybe you can make more of an impact on CrossFit, not from within CrossFit. And it's something just that, like, things like that, those conversations that can be such a simple thing, but when someone tells you it too, when you're in the right mindset, I remember I wrote that down, and I think I looked at that for, every day for just a couple months of, but I had no intention. It wasn't like, oh, because of that, I'm gone. No, it was, what is the right timing? And then Rich reached out and was like, hey, we want to push Mayhem, and kind of laid out the vision. And, and I remember talking to my wife, Maren, and she was like, I think this is it. This sounds like something that we should do. So, it's all science. Some of it is art.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that quote about like having the impact from the outside or a different angle. And that really stood out to me. And what about Mayhem checked those boxes in terms of like, hey, this is the right angle for me right now, or this is the outside piece that I can really kind of like dig into and have the impact that I want?
Yeah, I think one, like, kind of leading up to that, I've had conversations with other businesses and people within different areas, and I think when Rich reached out, it was within the space, and I've had conversations with people outside of the space. So that was one. I was like, man, like, you don't get much closer than than Rich. And I think a few things was obviously the trust. Oh, and the trust is important to me, specifically in a big move. What to calm down the unknown, a little more of that known, and then also the conviction of, obviously, of what Rich has done. I've been able to see it too. It's not something I'm unaware of. I've seen what Mayhem has been, what it stands for, and and that was something that allowed me to really kind of fall into and then ask a lot of questions. I think I spent a lot of time just talking to him and talking to Rich's team, and really just digging in, and knowing that the goal is relatively the same: to help people, to be in service of people, of our community. And obviously in a moment in time where, our community is sort of on this precipice, which it does feel like, it's something maybe we've been on for some time, for a handful of years, but I do think that we are at a moment that is really important, and it's very impactful. And it was clear that Rich sees, and Mayhem sees, the importance, but also the responsibility of this time. And for me, that was something. It's like, well, yeah, let's buckle in, and let's really take that responsibility with the respect that it needs to have, and get to work. And that was really what sealed the deal.
When you look back then on everything that you did over the years at CrossFit HQ, what is the one thing where you feel like you did have the biggest impact, or you can look back and say, yep, like the mission that I was set on to do actually flourished or panned out?
Well, it would be, it's hard to overlook the impact of what seminars did. And I say that because, in the moment when you stand in front of 50 people and you're delivering the level 1 or level 2 material, you're executing, and and it's amazing. But then, I'll share a little story. Someone I spoke with, gosh, maybe about a month ago, I was at the CrossFit Games, and a gentleman came up to me and just said, Austin, I want to thank you. And he's like, you put me through my level 1. was a moment in time. It was really, he kind of explained some stuff, how much it meant from his life and his own personal journey, his health, saved his life, at that point. And then from there, now he's a gym owner, and like just basically saying the trajectory of his life changed. And he says that level one was sort of this catalyst and an impetus. And, it's one of those moments where it gives you the goosebumps, you kind of pull back. And one, I'm just, you don't get a lot of those when you hear that, because again, why? Because I don't see the thousands of people I've put through seminars. When you have that, you realize, wow, like the moments are so special and the impact has this ripple effect. And that those seminars have that potential, but when you hear a story like that, it really hits home. And for doing that 400 seminars, you realize the impact there. That's really like when you think about when you set out to be a trainer and you walk onto the floor and you coach a person and you say heels down and knees out and chest up and butt back, and they squat below parallel for the first time. They get this, oh my God, holy shit moment, right? And like, I've never felt this before. And as a trainer, you those moments are what make you keep coming back. Then you evolve that to a class, and then you say, you know what, I want to go coach some people in the park on Saturdays. And then you evolve that into a gym. Your goal is how do you increase this opportunity to make an impact from one person to a group of people? And the unbelievable opportunity to do that at a seminar is just more exponential. And, so it's hard to overlook the impact that had, given the volume of seminars I had the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then honestly, I think, and then the last 5 years with the gyms was a whole different angle, but I think I learned so much over the last 5 years, the deep intricacies of our affiliate community, such a different angle. And I think that the biggest impact that I was able to make alongside of the team was, I think, really highlight, certainly within CrossFit, that, we have to help our gyms and help our affiliates and our coaches. Right. And I think that that was something that became super clear, is that and I don't think that we fully were able to finish that job of how do we do that. And I don't think the solution is super clear or easy, but I think at least raising the awareness that, hey, like, we have a lot of gyms, we have a lot of coaches, and I think we have some problems to solve here. And the first step is awareness. Before you can solve a problem, you have to be aware of what the problem is. And I do feel like we made that very clear. We learned a lot, and I think that was important. Granted, was the job done? I don't think so. But I think that the first step was really important of, hey, I think there's a lot of things that we can do to support, at least bring awareness to, and at least connect the right people with the right people. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough bridge to build, especially if you have a pretty deep understanding of the roots of the affiliate system from back in the day, where, one of the major like rallying points is like, hey, we just send you out into the world and do what you do, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, hey, you learn from it, and you kind of gave people the leash to lead themselves wherever they may.
That's right.
But I will say this: hearing you talk about the seminars and the profound impact, one thing that has always stood out to me is I think almost everyone can remember who the instructors were at their first level one. Every time I talk to someone about that, they're like, oh yeah, my first level one, it was boom, 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 boom. And some of them are names you probably haven't interacted with much in a long time, but it has created like such a visceral like impact that you remember those names and those people who translated it to you for so long. And kind of circling back to, the freedom to make the mistakes and giving people the leash. Is there any type of moments along the way, kind of inversely to this kind of proud moment, where you kind of just like shake your head at, you're like, oh man, I can't believe like I did this or I did that, or we did it that way? And because I think it's fun to look back, especially when you're at the beginning of something and it's kind of just like you said, results driven on Rich's podcast, and you kind of crack some eggs to make your omelet, for sure.
Yeah. It's I would say that drill is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about over the last month or so, of like, specifically is, looking back, what would I have done differently? Right. So now I have the opportunity of starting fresh at Mayhem, at a place I haven't been, with people I haven't worked with for the most part. And you think about like what are you going to do in these first 90 days when you're somewhere? What does that look like? But what do we default to? Well, what have we always done? And that's a trap, because then, well, it's not the same exact situation, but what would you have done differently? And so I think I have thought a lot about that, and I think, and then I think through, like, whether it was running my gyms or whatever it is, like there's so many opportunities for me to look back on of like, well, what would I have done differently? And I think the biggest thing is the biggest learning, right? Of like, man, is, I can easily, me personally, come in really hot. I like, and that's just my style. Whether when I was running seminars or the gyms or it's just, hey, like, just sort of like, let's start flipping tables and get to work. That, because I respond well to that, like it's just, it's just the style of like, hey, like if you come in here and you start, you just want to, wrestle and fight, let's do it. Like, I'm in. Like, I don't know what we're doing, but let's just do it. Right. And obviously that doesn't land well on everyone for many reasons. So that's one of my bigger learnings. And it took me a long time, even on seminar staff, of like understanding that, leadership is about meeting the people where you are, just like coaching. Hey, if you have 5 athletes in front of you, some athletes like to be yelled at to be motivated. Some just like a subtle nod, right? And everything in between. And all of that is okay. I think that's probably, my biggest learning of just from my management and leadership perspective. I think more specifics, I think, it's hard to think of like sort of like my time across, like what would I have done differently? Like specifics. I think my biggest assumption, which I was wrong about, was that whatever we do, if we will be received well, if its intentions were true and to be and helpful. I was like, hey, we're going to build this thing. We're going to do this thing. And you know what? People should like it because it's a gap. And, obviously, we care about our affiliates. And that was not the case. Right. And shame on me, because why? Our affiliates are contrarian by nature. And you said it, majority of our affiliates have, viewed CrossFit for the longest time as hands off, stay off, don't tell me what to do. I don't, and we're not used to this relationship, right? Of like having more. And yet that was the challenge, because many people said, hey, well, we want more support, because, I haven't heard from CrossFit in 10 years, being an affiliate, and so managing that in the very beginning was probably the area that I struggled with the most, because I was like, hey, if we're going to have this benefit for you for whatever it is, well, and the intent was to help, the intent was to whatever it might be, but didn't realize how important the level of participate at your own will. There's so many things that we needed to rebuild that trust. And that was one of those things where I think trust had really eroded over a long period of time. And I didn't respect that, because my journey was very different. Right. Where I never, like, Chris, for me, I never felt that way. Very close with CrossFit, obviously worked with CrossFit different ways. And that was probably one of the oversights of, I think there was just sort of a subtle burn for a lot of gym owners in different ways. And I think a lot of owners may not have been able to articulate reason why. They're just frustrated too. And that was my biggest sort of like shock of, like, for a year, I would just talk to gym owners that were just pissed.
And that's hard. I mean, that weighs on anybody. Yeah. And especially people that work in customer service, like dealing with people who are upset all the time. And in a lot of ways, like you were somebody who dealt with customer service, with the affiliates, with the people. Earlier, you were saying that, somebody said that sometimes the best way you can help is by like not being like part of CrossFit HQ, but being in some ways like a branch, a cousin. I don't know the best verbiage to say what Mayhem is, but like, what are some of those tangible things that you can think of right now that you making this move from CrossFit HQ to Mayhem really will help the bigger picture of, CrossFit, the community, the methodology, and just HQ as a whole? I mean, you could even lump sport into that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one, building off of what Rich and Mayhem have built is, and I kind of alluded to this trust, right? And I think that to me is the most important thing, is that, the authenticity of what Rich and Mayhem have done is very clear. And with that comes a responsibility to steward that trust, but also how do we support? Obviously, Mayhem, we have a lot of affiliates and gyms that follow our programming. We have athletes, and there's a lot of, and our community looks to Mayhem for whether it is, hey, guidance of, like, not to steal the line from the old shirt, but what is Rich doing, or what is he saying, right? But also then what are we doing from a, there's a couple layers that I get really excited about. One, I believe that at the core base of the methodologies has always been about learning based off what's happening, right? And that's something I think that there's a gap, and we have not done that as a whole effectively. So you think back to what Greg said, at Sand and Aromas, and he says, if someone comes here and all of their members have muscle ups, we want to go to that gym and learn what they're doing, because we want to then have all of our gyms do that. Just that basic premise of that black box theory of thinking.
Yep.
Where you have inputs, something happens, and you have outputs. We're results driven, and a lot has happened over the last 15 years. And I believe Mayhem's been at the epicenter of driving human performance, the best performance, but also alongside of that, the Rich has had an affiliate and a business and within the space, and learned so much from his own gym to the gyms. And what I'm excited about is sharing that. Sharing that is, so, what have we learned? And that's something I'm spending a lot of time on internally. Hey, what have we learned over the last 15 years? And how has that evolved from the basic premise of programming to how running gyms, to building communities, to, having, being in service of our community? That's how we get better. And that is something that I think we haven't properly been a steward of, but yet it's the essence of the actual CrossFit methodology, as not only from a performance perspective, but from a gym perspective. How do we share that from, running an effective business? And there are some people out there doing really good things in the space. So working with them as well is like, hey, identifying the people out there that are doing really powerful things to support our owners and coaches. And then from there, really start to dig in a little bit and share that. So that's what I'm most excited about. And to galvanize the community. And what I mean by that is we are a community. We throw that word around a lot, right? What does that mean, right? And it means we have to, like, a community means you take care of each other, right? And you care for one another, and you have shared common purpose as well. And I do believe that, whether we like it or not, Mayhem's a leader of that. And that, and that's something that, again, is, something I'm really excited to be a part of and drive forward. So with that is, how do we provide more support, add more value, get people to connect more? We have an amazing HQ in Cookeville. It's sort of like this place. Everyone's like, well, I mean, they're for a long time, obviously CrossFit and HQ, there are just moments that, like, they're called collisions, right? You want people to be around each other. And the nerdy, sort of office speak is like, that's why people like to be, like, in an office together, because you have the collisions, the organic opportunities just to like have a conversation, interact. Next thing you know, really good things happen. And so how do we get, more people to our HQ in Cookeville to not only be there to work out and be a part of that, but also to learn from one another, and to grow. So from coaches to athletes to owners. So those are some of the things I'm excited about.
Yeah, those collisions were what I felt made the media team in the quote unquote heyday like really valuable, right? Because Tony Budding did set up an HQ in Santa Cruz that everyone who wanted to be a part of the media team on that side, it was pretty much required, unless you were an outside producer, that you had to be there. And that's where so many of us were able to cross paths with one another and be able to have those creative moments. And separate question, but I feel like Cookeville is definitely that type of vortex that pulls everybody in. So I don't know if you have plans of moving there, or if you guys are firmly rooted in Boston, because I feel like it's only a matter of time. We're like, hey, we got a Cracker Barrel here. Like,
right. And they're not rebranding.
Exactly. Old logo.
Thank
Or same
God.
logo. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would tell you, obviously, I will be spending a lot more time there, and full-time living there, probably not, but, probably have a place there. So when I'm, and be there, right now I'm honestly spending almost every other week there. So I'm down there a lot. And it's a blast. It's fun. And, like I said, I just really enjoy being there. It's fun to be in a gym. It does remind me of the Reebok days. Where the space is very similar in that sense, right? It's huge, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just it's a test kitchen, right? Where and that's kind of how I think about that. Where it's not a flagship, right? Like we'll get there as we grow and to different flagships of what that looks like. But what is HQ? It's a test kitchen. It's a place to do things that you might not be able to do anywhere else by design. And it does remind me of those days at Reebok where we had a 30,000 square foot facility. You could just do silly things, but which is fun. It allows you to, to run really cool events, to have really special things, and also to test different things out. So it is, it's fun to be a part of that.
I assume then you and Rich have done some workouts together when you visit.
Of course. I mean, listen, I definitely had to dust off the old pegboard. I had to dust that thing off yesterday. I was like, it's been a while since it's been a while since I've been up there. But Rich is not lack on fitness. And obviously, his greatest skill, which anyone that's been around him knows, is his ability to just force you to work out with him. Right?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
The man's convincing.
Yeah, in a way that some people when they do it, like they come like when I do it, I sound like a bully, right? Right, but like when he does it, it's like yes, it's not it's just the way he does it really well, and it's fun because you can tell, it's to like where when other people that really don't want to, they just disappear at certain points. They figured it out, but but I love, I'm always like the one. If you ask me to work out, I'm gonna have to say yes, so, but maybe, at some point I'm like, hey, listen, I got to work, for you, Rich. So maybe I'll be able to say no at some point in time. But
okay, but if you and Rich were to go head to head in a one-on-one match, what would the workout be where you are confident that you could take him down?
Oh man, I mean, probably honestly, he's so fit, it's grotesque. Still, I mean, maybe if it were like a really, really heavy deadlift, because that's the only thing I'm actually good at. But
Tommy.
That's it. But other than that, I mean, it's impressive to see the level of fitness that he's maintained while running the business, while being, an amazing, husband and father to his, wild kids. It's cool to see what that looks like. It's but and I think we're going to throw down. There's a little competition in October in Texas. He did convince me to go out to that, so I think we'll throw down out there in Amarillo. Yeah. So I'll get out there. I'll have to dust it off a little bit for sure.
There we go. I definitely want to see that. I'm sure the Mayhem Media machine will have some good footage of that behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But speaking to some of the work that lies ahead of you, and you've kind of alluded to this like precipice, or maybe this time we're in this space in many ways feels like it could be a crossroads of sorts. It does feel like your impact that you can have at Mayhem feels a little bit more hands-on and immediate in terms of leading by example. But one of the things that you said that has stood out to me is the black box element, right? Being results driven. And I feel like CrossFit at its best has embraced that. But one of the historical obstacles and hurdles to get over is when it says black box but acts another way. That staunch dogmatism that happens sometimes when people find something that really impacts them, that they set their poles down and they say, this is it and only it. How do you combat that? And how do you convert that passion that, can lead to dogmatism and redirected in a way that allows you to still remain open source and have that black box mentality that it even feels like right now that we're hitting some of the walls of that?
Gosh, it's a really good question. And I think it's one of those philosophical questions that we could just spend forever discussing, because, and I think a lot about this because I think this is one of the, it's an area that is led to some unbelievable stifling in different areas within and outside the walls of CrossFit. And I think, and I, what I like to articulate this as, there's only one unacceptable answer, and that is to anything we're doing. If the answer is, well, this is how we've always done it. If that's the answer, it's unacceptable. Now, whatever that was, it may very well be the best way, but that can't be our deciding factor. We have to get there by thinking about what is the best way to achieve what we're looking to achieve. Don't know the answer, but the answer can't be, well, we've always done it this way. And then I think, to avoid falling into the dogmatic patterns, we have to, one, be okay with being wrong. We have to be okay with making mistakes. And ironically enough, right, like when you think, when you think about fitness, when you think about, looking at that trajectory, I think we've also, we haven't done a lot like from that evolutionary perspective of, even from a fitness perspective, where, really codifying, like, what are those things that we've learned over the last 15 years that have evolved the training? Some really basic tenets, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's what I'm really excited. Like when you talk, like you just look at someone like Rich and like what has Rich done to stay at top, and the athletes that Mayhem athlete has, right? There's a lot there that we can unpack. And then how do you distill that into, our members, and the people that walk into gyms every day, and then all the way to running businesses, right? So I think that, like, and I think this is a really important aspect because, we talked about, like, it's so easy to fall back to that. It's like, well, I'm not going to chase money. I'm going to chase excellence, and I'm going to chase excellence. And all I have to do is care. And if all I do is care and I want and chase excellence, then it will come. Well, yes, but what does that mean? Right. And I think that, like, dogmatically, we've been conditioned to think that, like, making money, running a healthy business is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Versus, well, and I always say, well, think about from a service perspective. Someone was asking, like, well, I want to be able to give, my membership to people in need, right? There is a good little example. Like, if people come in and they can't afford it, or like, I want to be able to, I feel like I should be able to comp them a membership for free, and then you pull it back. Well, you need to earn the right to do that. And if you're running a healthy business and you're profitable, then you have the right to be able to do that, because you now have the leeway to do that. You now are able to do what you want to do to take care of whomever you want to take care of. But the only way you can do that is if you have a healthy business. And the only way you have a healthy business is to do X, Y, and Z. So we have to kind of pull it back a couple layers to really think. But if you start with that mindset, what it had led to, and I think this is like you kind of pull back to this, the cream will rise to the top, this sort of lease rents model, that concept, which I think is really unbelievable. But what it really does is it leads to a very select few that can run very successful businesses. Very few, because you need to marry everything. And it's the intrinsically motivated. It's sort of like those that have the certain skill sets, like on Oregon Trail, that just happen to fit. Just so you can survive. Like, like, I'm a carpenter, so I can fix this wagon wheel that broke. Like, thank God I fixed that skill, right? Right, type of deal. Like, that's like, and then a couple right time, right places. And we see that in our community. We have a handful of gym owners. By I say handful, that's obviously a lot, but that are doing really good, but a lot are struggling. Right. We just know that statistically. And so we have to, make a bit of a different approach, and they don't have to be, but it's really hard. It's really hard to run a business. So I think that that's one of those things, that dogmatic approach of, well, just do whatever you want. Just, well, I don't know if that's necessarily like, from a fitness perspective, those that really took a systematic approach to their fitness and really understood what they were doing. You see that difference there versus just do whatever you want.
Yeah. And that ecosystem that a lot of these successful long-term affiliates doesn't exist anymore. the ecosystem that was present when they started, which maybe have been more conducive to that original mindset and mentality, right, is very different. There wasn't really the competition in the space from other like quote unquote CrossFit adjacent programs and companies, and oftentimes if you were opening an affiliate, you were more than likely the first affiliate in your 30 to 40 mile radius, right? So like that free and which afforded you some freedoms to make mistakes and kind of not have as much of a systematic approach, and then eventually figure it out. Where I feel like with a much more developed ecosystem, like you kind of have to hit the ground running in some ways if you want to be successful or have the impact that you hope to by being a successful, longstanding business.
That's a really good point. And I think, and the answer to that is yes. And it's also, it's you got to pull back and say, man, it's really cool to see the evolution, of fitness and what CrossFit really has done. I'm a fan. As I get older, like I feel like I've become way more sort of just accepting of everything that's going on in the space. Where there's a time where it's like, if you don't prescribe to variance, functionality, intensity, and believe in X, Y, or Z, then I don't like you and your fitness sucks, right? Versus the reality is like, yeah, you have these other brands out there, like these smaller franchises and boutiques and all, like, well, they all came and from CrossFit and they've exploited one or two parts and they're running successful businesses. It's a pretty cool thing, right? And what I mean by that is they have taken something and ran with it. And imitation is an unbelievable sign of flattery, but also shows you that something's working, right? And like, take the NFL, they call it the copycat league, right? Like literally someone does something that's amazing and every other team copies it. Not every team does it great. Take the tush push as an example for you NFL fans out there. Not every team can do it great. One or two can, but they try to copy it. And but there's no animosity, but what's key is that you have to have the first mover advantage, right? So, and Denise Thomas will be very happy that I talk about her Eagles because that's all she talks about and show.
Oh, man.
But I know, but they have to make sure that they're the best at that, or else they sort of lose that. And that is the responsibility of our gym owners in the space is, hey, we have the first mover advantage. We can't lose that because other people are going to come and try to copycat, and some of them will actually be pretty good at it. But it's also not a bad thing, right? And it's a part of the deal, right? And so I've taken a less controversial approach when it comes to all of those things. Because I think about more people aware of fitness is really what we're trying to do, right? And if we do our job, there's no shortage of people that need fitness. So when we think about it, we just have to be, again, restaurants are a really good analogy to CrossFit and fitness in general, right? Where there's a lot of places you can go eat, right? And where do you choose to go do that? And what are the factors that make you go back to a certain place, right? And that's something that, like, really, when you think about that, what are the factors that make you go back to a restaurant? And it really actually is a wonderful expression of the client experience of what you'd see within a really good gym. Yeah. From how you interact on the website to their to book a table, right? Really important. And the minute you walk in, that first interaction can make or break the rest of the meal. Yet it has nothing to do with the food, right, and then the other people there, right, which the restaurant has like very little control over, but the ambiance, the vibe, the feel, the people, the music, the setting, all of these things, like a gym. And then you sit down, and someone is there to take care of you, the coach, right? But that's still not the food. That's like you think about it, it's like the workout, right? There's actual physical workout.
Yeah.
It's a very similar, and that's how hard it is to run a gym. You think about that, right?
Yeah.
Yet all we think about is, it's like, oh, I got to coach this or do that or whatever. There's so many factors that can lead to that. And honestly, that's some of the stuff that we really want to lean into at Mayhem is like, how do we support our gyms and our owners and our coaches in a way that's really meaningful, and based off what we've learned, and then down the line, how do we scale that from an experiential perspective and lead from the front, bring in the right people, sort of galvanize the community of people that are doing some unbelievable things out there. So I'm excited about that, but it's no short order.
Yeah.
No, and with all of these different things that you do want to accomplish and this great vision, and it does seem like yourself and the other folks at Mayhem are on the same team. And I love, like, even listening to the podcast, like the diversity in conversations and the different viewpoints, but everybody can still kind of come together with that same like community first mindset. If you were to look at yourself a year from now, what would be something that you could look back and say, hey, we accomplished that, and that was like our biggest success for the year? What would that be?
Yeah, I think great question. I think, I think success would be that the Mayhem Gym Network has a network of gyms that are making a larger impact than they are today. And what I mean by that is because impact can be different things. It's not volume. It is truly, whether you're 5 people in a gym or you're 500 members, that we want to be able to make a larger impact on their respective communities. And so if we do our job, we make that route clearer, and we have more resources and tools to get there. Because to your point, we have such a diverse community, and success means different things to different owners and to different coaches. That was one of my bigger learnings in over the last 5 years is what defines a successful gym, right? You ask 10 gym owners, they will give you 10 different answers.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
You ask 10 business owners in most spaces, they'll give you a very clear, EBITDA margin and blah, 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 right? In our world, it's very different, which is an unbelievable opportunity. And that's why I say impact, where, making sure that service, which is one of our values, is to make sure that we can be a steward of that. And I do believe that there are a handful of fundamentals that we can support along the way, whether that is, hey, you know what, driving more members, or just driving more impact to the handful that you might have in your garage on the weekend. And, and there's not a dollar amount you have to put on that because of that impact that you make, right? And if there's one thing we know, is that our community cares about impact over anything else. And that does go back to that notion of what are you chasing, this notion of excellence. Well, define excellence, and then how do we get there, right? I think that's the key. So I think that success is if we do that, and I feel like we have a really good plan to get there. And we're going to be busy as heck. I mean, it's fun. I'll be getting on the road a lot more. Like it's I'm going to head out to Coaches Congress, out in London, and then I'll down at in Texas at Affiliate Con, and then Amarillo. So I'll be all over. So I'm dusting off some of the old the travel chops again.
Getting those sky miles in.
That's right.
Well, and I think that's an important component, right? Because you experienced it through the seminar staff, and 400 plus seminars globally, is that there is a benefit to thinking more globally in terms of the unique opportunities and challenges that present to people based on where they are from a geographical location. And Mayhem is one of those brands that is international, and you have gyms all over. Is there anything from that, with that in mind, that stands out to you as far as like, hey, this is maybe an obstacle or an element of the community that people aren't talking about enough? Because we can be very US centric. I can admit that.
Yeah. No, I think it is a challenge that is not, I spent a lot of time at CrossFit, like trying to figure this one out. And I think, so will CrossFit always be somewhat US centric? Yes, it will be. But what does that mean, right? So I actually think so what is the opportunity set there? Because with any challenge, there's always some type of equal and opposite force, which in this case would be an opportunity. And specifically from a Mayhem perspective, the opportunity lies within, there are individuals, there are groups, there are gyms in all areas of the world that are looking to keep pushing forward. So something that we're going to be looking at is who are those in those respective markets that we can really lean on, potentially partner with, to really help grow. I think, because you have two ways you can grow internationally. You can say you bulldoze yourself, or you find really trusted, healthy partners, right? Mm-hmm. And there's not one right or wrong way. It's just how you decide to do that. And I think within the fitness space, the service industry specifically, which is what we are in, understanding culture, understanding people, not only from logistics, boots on the ground, but just what it looks like to interact with people in Korea will look very different than in France, than in Brazil, than in Canada, right? And making sure that you have the right people in those positions are really important, but they're already there, right? So I think that's like, so how we lean on that. So that's kind of how we're looking at that, because like you said, we are international, and we have people that really care about Mayhem and care about the growth of their community. So how do we empower them, support them, give them the tools and resources, without, but I don't think we need to bulldoze, just because I don't think it's what we need to do, but also, CrossFit has grown internationally, the methodology, with very little, you would say, in fact, zero in the early days, intent to do so. But that's the mark of something special, right? It's like, okay, and this is what people don't like to hear, is that if people want it, they get it, right?
Yeah.
If they want it, they get it. So okay, awesome. I think we've proven that like, okay, people want to do this. Great.
Yeah.
And no matter what hurdle you'll give us, they'll figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do we make it easier? Let's just lower the hurdle, right?
Yeah.
I think, and that's, I think it's just a shift in that mindset.
Yeah. Or and you can agree or disagree. What about the people that don't know what they need or what they want yet? Right? How do we plant a seed of, hey, this is a possibility for you, and then that kind of renaissance of thought occurs? Because I will say, in my personal experience, I have always been like athletic in terms of playing sports and competing and all of these things. And I had even the early days, it was like, well, you have to try this CrossFit thing. Well, I had no idea that was what I wanted. Right. And it was a circumstance of chance. Like my best friend happened to grow up across from the ranch, and all these things led to me just showing up one day and trying it. Right. And then you have that light bulb moment. I can't say that I necessarily would have found that regardless, just because the nature of who I am and how I kind of progress through things. But I just got really, really lucky in that scenario that someone was able to kind of make that connection for me. So I think Sean talks about this all the time. How do we speak to people outside of our circle and help them entertain the possibility that this could be for them, even when it may not even be in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, well, I mean, gosh, probably another topic for another call, because we could do something that we go into deeper.
Yeah.
But, I will tell you that,
for sure.
If like I said, my views on a lot of this have become way less, you could say, sort of like adversarial, and more sort of just different, from the sense of, let's take GLP-1s. They're super hot topic right now, and they're polarizing.
Yeah.
And I think within the CrossFit world, like you kind of take one of two stances, right? It's like, oh, like, and you have the old school of like no shortcuts. You have this notion of like, you get into the gym, so on and so forth. Well, I take a very different thought approach to this, where I've done a lot of research on this. I've done, and I also don't know what I don't know. I'm by no means am I a doctor or anything like that, but I will tell you that we are going to see millions of people enter the fitness market over the next few years. Millions. Specific to the US. This is just US data. We're going to see this. And why? Because part of this is like, hey, the charge is, hey, if you're taking this, that actually, that's something I don't really care about. What I care about is, on the other side of that is, well, we know that strength training is very important. Community and positive habit building is very important. These are all things that basically are that these individuals are told they need to do. And there's a significant amount of emotional struggle, these individuals that are taking this, whether it is, they're nervous to tell people about it, they're embarrassed that they're taking it, there's a lot of stigma for whatever reason. And so you need to be around people that you can trust and that you can care about, whatever it might be. I don't want to get into the conversation of who's prescribing. Like, that's not a conversation I care about. What I care about is, we got to get like, hey, let's get you in the gym. Let's lift some weights. Let's find some really awesome people to hang out with. Let's chest pump and high five, and let's make some positive life changes, right? Like, the catalyst for you getting in the gym, if you walk in the gym, I actually don't care about. I care about having a place that you trust to come to, that you're willing to take that leap, right? Because the reality is you can't force anyone to walk into your gym. Right? Never works. You guys have all tried to drag someone that you know into a CrossFit gym. It doesn't work. They have to, on their own journey, walk in. We have to create that environment that gets them in there. And who would have thought over the next couple of years, there's going to be millions of people that are told you got to lift some weights, you got to be around people, and you got to start developing new healthy habits. Well, sounds like a CrossFit gym's best nightmare, right? Like, you know, so I think a lot about that, to that point of like, we are on the precipice of something really special, but we need to be, so yeah, as coaches and owners, we need to be on point. We need to know what we're doing. Like, you know, and again, I nerd out on some of this stuff, but the client journey, you know, like if someone reaches out to you, you need to respond within 30 seconds. Like literally, like there are just things that you, or else you're going to lose it to someone else. It's not saying that whatever you're doing is wrong. Someone's just going to do it better than you. Right. Yeah. You know, and then also, you know, but once they're there, do what you do best, which is change people's lives. And that's what we know our affiliates and owners and coaches can do. You know, so those are the things I'm excited about, where, you know, just telling that story of like, and how do you create that trust, which we've always been about, right? Like, and at that core, and, you know, but who would have thought now the things that have made us intimidating in the past are the things that people are soon to be seeking out, right? Weightlifting is something that made CrossFit very intimidating for the general public, right? Just simply put, weightlifting, barbells, but that's actually what people are going to be seeking out, and they are seeking out now. You have the likes of Hubermans and Atias out there that are articulating that strength training and working out is more important than anything else you do. Well, great. And we don't need to get in the weeds that someone says don't deadlift or don't squat. Again, strength training, great. We got sandbags, we got sleds, we got everything you need, right? Like, again, the details matter less. What matters is we have a huge opportunity. So those are those are things that really get me excited. And I think there is a huge opportunity ahead of us. So I agree with you fully, Tommy, on that factor. And it's, you know, we got some work to do.
Yeah. I said this, I think I mentioned it on your announcement, but I'm always grateful to you and your perspective. And I always feel like I walk away a little bit wiser with another way of looking at something and approaching it that has benefited me greatly. So I want to express some gratitude for that, especially because in Rich's podcast, Rory joked that everyone was pumping up Rich's tires. And I think you deserve some of that as well. But with that being said, I do have one last question before we let you go. It's one thing has always stood out to me. It seems very clear that like you're someone that's really good at implementing systems for himself and structure for himself that allows you to be effective. And whether that is bulldozing and coming in hot during those early days of the seminars, or how that's evolved. And so for maybe something that some people who are listening can maybe take from home. What are maybe some benchmarks or bumpers for you as a person that allows you to know that you're where you need to be? And even if you can't get specific, maybe what are some practices or things that you have employed that have helped you find those?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm a huge fan of systems and you know, for me personally, but also when it comes to work as well. And I think one is that you have to figure, and it's like, and you have to figure out what works for you, right? Like, and now, so, but there are some red threads, right? And so like, and what are the red threads? Consistency really matters. And whatever that looks like. So, you know, whether like it's nerdy, morning person, night person, it doesn't matter. Just be consistent. Like I wake up early, I have a morning routine. Everyone shouldn't do that. It really works for me. People that work out at 8 o'clock at night, they're superheroes to me. Don't understand that. So like, it is, but you know, I think that what gets measured gets managed is something I think a lot about. Full stop. Life and work in the same. You have to, and then you got to go deeper. So you have to make sure that what you're measuring is appropriate, right? So again, nerdy example. You need to understand what your macronutrients are. You need to know what a protein, carbohydrate, and a fat is if you're going to properly weigh and measure your food. So there's a level of education, understanding, because if you don't know, you're measuring the wrong things, it doesn't matter. So you need to go a layer deeper than that. And that's so when it comes to your professional, whatever you're doing at work, like, you need to measure things, but make sure you're measuring the right things. So you're viewing the right outputs so that you can make those right tweaks. Same thing in your daily life, whether it is, what are you trying to achieve? Well, let's measure certain things. And then from there, we can manage that within our own lifestyle, your own finances, nutrition, whatever that might be. Right. And things that I can always default to numbers, and all those things are easy, but there are soft skills in there too. Like, and things that you can say, well, you need to have a date night once a month, right? As an example, right? Those are things that you don't, but like, okay, well, did it happen or not? But it didn't. Well, we got like, these are just things that so I think that's that red thread that can really walk through across of like, hey, I want to wake up the same day every day of the week. What time is that? Doesn't matter what time it is, just measure that. Were you able to do it? That to me is something that has really helped because it's simple, it's clear. And consistency matters over anything else, right? Intensity, like doing something insanely intense for 5 days and never doing it again will not yield anywhere much as near a result as just doing something consistently over the long term.
Yeah. That's a great message, and I appreciate it. And
always
it's funny. I think even if you've heard something like that before, the consistency of the messaging, I think, also makes it that much more impactful as well. Austin, always appreciate what you bring to the table, your approach, and what you've been able to do for the community at large over the years. Appreciate you taking the time to chat. And I know you mentioned one of the topics we could spend a whole nother podcast on. One of these days, I would absolutely love to do that because I know Sean's got some questions as well. But congrats on the new role with Mayhem. Excited to see where that takes you and takes the Mayhem community and how that can impact the greater community at large, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Austin.
Thank you.
Austin Malleolo, man. Great dude. I don't know why this is the memory that pops in my head of Austin. It's the 2010 CrossFit Games last event where he was out there in the all white spandex. I don't know why that just...
I mean, that sounds pretty memorable for you, Sean.
Yeah, that's the one, because that's the event where it was like, there was the Rich and the rope climb, and it was like they made him do push-ups on the ground, and Dave was out there going, okay, go. And everyone just started, they had no idea. So I just remember Austin, it was like white and black, like head to toe.
Yep. Well, the White Knight, the White Warrior, a bunch of nicknames from that. And I mean, it's crazy that was like, in the early days. Well, he even mentioned in his interview with Rich, he was out there like, the old Do-Win lifting shoes and all white spandex, and the companies at the time like Body Science and Skins.
I remember that. Yeah.
Which just like aren't a thing now, And yeah, it's just I always appreciate his insight into things, and his perspective on things, as well as like his ability, like the stories he had with Rich and Rory chopping it up about the old days. It's always good stuff. I reiterated this to him in our interview, but like, it's a slam dunk for Mayhem. I texted Rory right away to congratulate them on like what just a superstar.
Yeah.
In their ranks now.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was somebody that we could have had a 5-hour podcast and still had more things to dissect and chat about. And like, he's a great person to talk to about, I mean, from CrossFit to life to philosophy. He just great guy.
You want to see how far the sport has come? Go back on YouTube and watch the 2010 finals of the last event of the CrossFit Games, and you'll just be like, "Whoa, my God!
What is this?"
It's come a long way.
Yeah.
So.
And when you see that rig in the middle, just picture 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and me sitting on top of it with an impact driver. Just
I can still hear those things echoing through the StubHub Center.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, good work, Tommy. Thank you for contributing to that. We appreciate your effort. Who was it? Was it Sherwood who put together a wheelbarrow that like fell apart, or who was that?
He put together, I think he like jokingly put together a wheelbarrow, and Chan grabbed it and
just crumbled.
It was like when I don't know in the movies when they cut to like someone made some beautiful craft art and the other person in the class like, oh, what'd you do? And it's like some cheap rickety thing, and it just like it disintegrates on site.
All right. Before we get out of here, I know we got some community support that we want to get to.
Yeah, so this weekend in Kauai is the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run. It's something I like to at least bring attention to every year. It's been a major piece of the community for the last decade plus, and it's also in support of the Keala Foundation. So the Keala Foundation is a nonprofit on Kauai that helps combat the kind of the unseen and oftentimes unspoken about issues of drug and alcohol abuse on the island, particularly with the youth. And they combat it through fitness and mentorship and all sorts of good stuff to keep kids actively engaged, keep youth on the island actively engaged in healthy habits. And they have CrossFit affiliates there. They have mentorship programs. They do things like outrigger canoeing, surfing, all sorts of stuff that get kids involved into activities that ultimately keep them off the streets. And every year, the Ultimate Hawaiian Trail Run is I want to say they always say 10K-ish trail run through the like mountains and kind of jungles of Kauai. That every year it's a unique and new course that they cut in the weeks leading up to, and it's on protected land, so that you rarely ever get to go out that way outside of this. So it's a privilege as well. And then it involves some mud pits as well. It's always fun. They do a kids showcase where you get to go out and coach and train kids and perform your fitness in front of friends and family, which is always great. So that's going on this week. Today they just had their charity golf tournament. The trail run is on Saturday, I believe, with the kids showcase usually is on Friday. It might be Saturday morning. So yeah, you can support their foundation if you can't make it out to the race, or if you're not going out to the race already. And it goes to a good cause. They provide meals, transportation, all the good stuff. Hafi, Sarah, the whole crew out there do just a wonderful job, and it's something worth supporting.
I'm going to make this statement right now, and I got to find a way to follow through on it. I'm going to make this happen next year. I want to go to this thing.
Yes.
I want to do it.
Yeah.
Dude, I'll do it with you.
Right, I want to do it.
Okay, should all three of us go?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, 2026.
Okay.
It's so fun. There's a handful of like transformative experiences that you talk about, something where you like just kind of see things differently. The first time I did the trail run was definitely that, like coaching the kids, working with the kids. And that year they had like a high point in the race where you're like climbing on all fours, and you're like up at the top of this like little mountain you can see down. And it was just like, I don't know, very surreal. And then this little, like one of the island boys like ran past me barefoot. And I'm like, what a great piece of perspective. And he was just like happy. And I don't know, it was an amazing experience for sure.
Cool. Yeah, it's a great foundation. Keala Foundations, they're great, and they're fantastic people. So I had a chance to hang out with them for my 50th when I was there. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to do it for today. Thanks again to Austin Malleolo for taking the time to talk with Tommy and Lauren. Great conversation with him, and we always appreciate his insight. Thanks to you for listening. Thanks for watching. Thank you to our sponsor, Thirdzy. Thirdzy.com. The code is TEF, and you will save 20% on their Rest and Recovery Collagen. For Tommy Marquez and Lauren Kalil, I'm Sean Woodland. Take care of each other, be better, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Recognition, the start of a first date. If it's good, it's good. I don't want to wait.